Blues All Around Me by B.B. King. B.B. King, born as Riley King, was born on September the 16th of 1925 on Bear Clare Plantation in Mississippi, near the small town of Ida Benner. His parents were poor sharecroppers, and at the age of 4 his parents separated, and he and his mother moved to Kilmichael, Mississippi. He remembers how attracted to church and church music, especially when his minister played the guitar. This was only when he was about 5. He even remembers listening to the blues on his aunt's record player. When he was only 9 years old, his mother died. King suggests from diabetes, which he would have issues with himself later in life. His mother, Nora Ella King, was only 25 at the time of her death. From age 10 to 13, Riley lived alone in his mother's cabin. He tells us how isolated, hungry, and hurt he felt during this time. At this time, he saved up little money he had for his very first guitar. At the age of 13, he moved in with his father. Even though his father was doing reasonably well, he didn't like the situation much, and moved to Indianola, near his birthplace of Ida Benner. Riley worked as a sharecropper for a Jewish man named Mr. Johnson, who treated blacks very well, at least for a plantation owner in the South. Riley remembers starting out picking cotton, plowing with a mule. He was being paid only $4 a week. He remembers that Mr. Johnson was the only plantation owner he had heard of who hired a black foreman. Foreman used a tractor, and Riley was always wanted to drive it. To Riley, his dream on the plantation was to become one of the tractor drivers, as it would not only give him more money, but also social status. Eventually, Riley was promoted to being a tractor driver. He then made $22.50 a week. As a 19-year-old, he remembered driving to town and to date girls and play blues on the street. During this time, he married, but the relationship would later falter as he got into the music business. In 1943, he enlisted in the Army for World War II. He finished basic training, but ran away because he wasn't going to go overseas, because he could drive. One day, when he was back at Mr. Johnson's, he wrecked the tractor in Mr. Johnson's garage. He left that night, as any black man would during the Jim Crow era. He hitched a ride to Memphis, Tennessee to see his second cousin, Bucko White, who was coincidentally a professional blues musician himself. King had an eye-opening experience in the city. He felt belittled by the musical talent he heard on the main stretch of Beale Street. In Memphis, he talks about how he loved radio, and how he modeled after Arthur Godfrey. Just as he got to Memphis, new black radio stations were popping up everywhere. One day, he went up to one of the program hosts and asked if he could play on the station. After he played for the man, the host of the station of WDIA agreed to let him on. He started out by playing for only a half hour in the afternoon. He was asked to write and perform a jingle for a phony tonic called Pepticon. He later found out it was very alcoholic. This ad got quite popular among the local community, and Riley started getting more and more airtime. As his airtime grew, he also became a DJ. He played everything from T-Bone Walker to Duke Ellington. DJs commonly used nicknames. He used Beale Street Blues Boy, which was then shortened to Blues Boy, and then even more shortened to just BB. Rapidly over the next 2 years, he became well known locally, and by the mid-50s, he was touring in DC, Chicago, and in the Apollo Theater in New York. He said about the time period between 1950 and 52, "It was hard to believe, but soon I was making $1,000 a week. Only a couple of years before, I saw myself as a tractor-driving superstar at $22.50 a week." After his rise to fame in the mid-50s, he was in great musical company, with such names like Elvis Presley and Jerry Lee Lewis. By the end of the 50s, though, he saw himself slipping in between the cracks of rock, jazz, and soul. He was referred to as an old-style bluesman who had a dwindling, aging audience. He was still being given recognition within the musical community by famous musicians such as the Beatles and Eric Clapton. Unfortunately, even that couldn't help him that much, as he faced his own problems with gambling and the IRS. In 1970, King found the man that would turn his career around. It was his new manager, Sid Seidenberg. B.B. King started playing at rock concerts, and to a younger generation now. Sid also set up a tour for King outside the US, in countries like Germany and Japan. Also during this time, King produced his most famous song, "The Thrill Is Gone." This was the high point of King's career. He turned his financial situation completely around, and for the most part, since then, he tours extensively, sometimes 340 days a year. He has been the winner of countless Grammys and other awards, and up until his death, he still played as much as he physically could. And just this May of 2015, King died of complications of diabetes at the good old age of 89.